In this episode of Vintage Audio Review, I'm going to talk about the Cambridge Soundworks Azur 650A integrated amplifier. This guy right here. In 2009, it sold for $600 or about $840 in 2025. It was rated at 75 watts per channel into 8 ohm loads at not more than 0.05% THD. It had a couple different power ratings, but we'll just say the worst case THD was like 0.05%. And its frequency response was listed as minus 1 dB from 5 hertz to 50 kilohertz. This guy is the first piece of Cambridge audio gear that I've tested. They make speakers and other things. And in fact, there was a CD player that was part of this line. The Azur line, from what I'm told, is the Cambridge Audio's higher end line, like the Pioneer Elite, or Sony has a line that is their elite stuff. And apparently this was Cambridge Audio's elite line of audio gear. This particular model doesn't have the phono stage option. Apparently there was an option for a phono stage. This does not have it. It has a bunch of inputs though, all single-ended, RCA kind of inputs. And we'll take a tour of the front and the back. It does come with this nice little remote. It's very solid feeling, and it would allow you to control the matching CD player if you had purchased that at the same time. Like most of the videos, we'll do a close-up of the front, look around back, what's going on. I'll pop the case off and we'll see what it looks like inside. And then, of course, I will show you how it performed as well as how it sounded. Here's a close-up view of the Azur 650A. The one unique thing about it, sort of, is that it has an MP3 1/8 inch stereo jack. And you can select that jack right here with the MP3. Now, as you'll see when we go around back, it also has some RCA jacks for your MP3 player, or it could just be another auxiliary input if you want. And then it has a bunch of inputs for your different auxiliaries, and we have a tape monitor button here. Obviously, balance and volume controls here. And then it has treble and bass controls here. The direct switch would bypass the bass and treble controls. This right here is your IR window for the remote, and it has LEDs that show you which speaker or speakers are selected. We have a 1/4 inch headphone jack here and your on-off switch here. And then we have the protection LED here, and there's a key in the back that tells you what this thing means if it flashes so many times. So you'll see that in just a moment. Here is the rear of the Azur 650A. Our main power on-off switch here. Our IEC AC power cord connection is there. Then we have our 3-way binding posts for up to 2 sets of speakers. These here are for other system components for Cambridge Audio products. We have our assorted inputs here. We also have a line input for that MP3 player. Then we have our tape monitor inputs here. We also have pre-out jacks here, and then we have our tape monitor loops here. There also is a key for what the LED flashes up front may have, and it kind of describes if it flashes once it means something and so on here. So the key for that is right there. This is the remote control for the Azur 650A. It has a lot of functions, including selecting which speakers you want. Once you remove the cover, this is what it looks like inside. It is a dual power supply arrangement, so it has 2 windings off the toroidal transformer, and then it has the capacitors here for the power supply for each channel. And this is just another view, and these are some of the output. I think they're transistors. They have a 4th terminal. I don't remember what number transistor they were. I think they were just a regular transistor, but they did have a 4th terminal. I'm not sure the purpose of that. And this kind of just shows how things are laid out from another angle. Here is our standard THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz with the Azur 650A putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. The volume control was adjusted for 25 dB of gain, and the performance for this guy is really outstanding. we'll say 94 dB minimum SNR, THD better than 0.0003%, and the THD plus noise is a very low, minus, we'll call it 93 dB. Right now I've switched over to 4 ohm loads, and we're putting out about 5 watts into those 4 ohm loads. Volume control is still set for 25 dB of gain. I did not need to move it when I went over to the 4 ohm loads from the 8 ohm loads. SNR is outstanding, above 90 dB. THD outstanding, better than 0.0004%. And overall, the THD plus noise is better than minus 91 dB. So this guy looks equally as good into 4 ohm loads as it does into 8 ohm loads. There is a specification for the 650A that with a 1 watt output signal into 8 ohm loads, the SNR should be better than 92 dB. Well, we're about 6 dB away from that, but overall everything looks really good as far as the THD and the THD plus noise. The 650A has a specification that it should put out 75 watts into 8 ohm loads at 1 kilohertz at not greater than 0.002% THD, and we're much better than that for both channels. SNR is still outstanding, around 95 dB. THD plus noise is about minus 95 dB. So this guy is doing an outstanding job. And with the Azur putting out 75 watts into 8 ohms at 1 kilohertz, you can see that the odd or third harmonics are just slightly higher than the even or second harmonics. As there is no 4 ohm specification for the Cambridge Audio Azur 650A, I played around with it and was able to get about 112, 113 watts into 4 ohm loads at really good THD and really good SNRs and really good THD plus noise. This, of course, is with the volume control set to 25 dB of gain, and I have the direct switched in, so it's bypassing the tone controls, and of course we're at 1 kilohertz. If I start increasing the input signal level, get a little bit more power, I start getting the right channel to come up as far as its noise, and the harmonics start increasing in size. So you could probably get a little bit more than this. And in case you're wondering what the harmonics look like, here they are. You can see that the odd harmonics, the third harmonics, are higher than the even or second harmonics, which is what you would expect for most solid-state amplifiers. This ugly response is the THD SNR plot at 1 kilohertz with the 650A putting out about 129 watts into 4 ohm loads. There is no specification for the 4 ohm performance. We're at better than 0.5% THD. SNR is not very good at 48 to 50 dB, and the THD plus noise is minus 44, 45 dB. So it doesn't look real pretty. This would be the very maximum amount of power that would probably come out of it. So it's just kind of here for information purposes. Here is the 650A's frequency response from 20 hertz to 50 kilohertz. And this is with it putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. As you can see, the channels are very well balanced within less than 1/10 of a dB. And at 50 kilohertz, we're down, 7/10 of a dB. At 20 hertz, we're down about 2/10 of a dB. So it would be meeting a specification which states that the frequency response should be down no more than 1 dB from 5 hertz to 50 kilohertz. I should point out that this is with the direct mode switched on, so we're bypassing the tone controls here. With the direct switch off, meaning that we're going through the bass and treble controls, which are in their center detented positions, and with the Azur putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads from 20 hertz to 50 kilohertz, we're at most about plus or minus 4/10 of a dB. It looks like the right channel is not as flat as the left channel, but overall the frequency response over the 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz would be about plus or minus 3/10 of a dB, which would be pretty good. Right now we're looking at the frequency response of the Azur 650A with it putting out about 5 watts into 4 ohm loads this time. The frequency range is 20 hertz to 50 kilohertz, And I do have the direct switch on, so it's bypassing the tone controls. The specification is that it should be better than 1 dB down at 50 kilohertz, and we're basically there. We're a tad over 1 dB, but at 20 hertz, we're only about, 3/10 of a dB on either the high end of the band or at the low end of the band at 20 kilohertz. We're down not more than 3/10 of a dB. So overall, this guy looks really good. The two channels are within less than 0.05 dB of each other. Here is the Azur's Crosstalk, and this is with it putting out 5 watts into 8 ohm loads for the active channel. I should mention that the gain is still set for 25 dB of gain. And there is no specification for the Crosstalk other than the owner's manual says that it should be very good. But we are actually doing pretty good at 20 kilohertz. We're better than, 72 dB. So overall, I would say the Crosstalk on this guy is doing pretty darn good. The Azur 650A does have a specification for damping factor, and that is that it should be greater than 100. And basically, we're greater than 100 most of the frequency band, but not all of the frequency band. And at worst case, it's at 50, which really isn't that bad in the grand scheme of damping factors. So I would say that it is meeting its specification. Right now, I'm going to look at the input-to-input isolation. There is no specification for this, and to set the stage, I've got a minus dBV signal going into the auxiliary input, and then what I'm going to do is switch over to the CD input, which are terminated into shorts, and what we will see is the amount of leakage from the auxiliary input to the CD input. There is no specification for input-to-input isolation. The volume control is set for 25 dB of gain, and we are connected to 8 ohm loads. So let's see what happens when I go ahead and switch over to the CD input. There we go. So we're down at worst case about, I would say, minus 80 dB down from where we started at 0. So this particular 650A would have about 80 dB of input-to-input isolation. I could have tried a different pair of inputs, but I just figured I would pick one to see how well it did. Here is the Azur 650A's THD versus frequency for several different output power levels from 1 watt to 75 watts, and that's into 8 ohm loads. The volume control has been set for 25 dB of gain. There is one specification that it should be better than 0.02% THD from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz at 10 watts. So that would be these two colors here, and 0.02% would be right here. So we would be meeting that requirement. Actually, we're looking pretty good, except for 75 watts for the left channel, or up to maybe 0.2% for a couple of frequencies, or actually for frequencies less than about 30 hertz. This plot shows the Cambridge Audio Azur 650A's THD versus power at 1 kilohertz and into 8 ohm loads. This is just kind of information where we start at 1 watts and then I ran it up to 90 watts. Remember, it's rated at 75 watts, and basically you can see that at 90 watts we're a bit over 1% THD into 8 ohms. Right now I've got the CD input selected, and those inputs are terminated into shorts. The volume control is still set for 25 dB of gain, and I am still connected to 8 ohm loads. There is no specification for system noise, but other than the 60 hertz factor right here, it's better than minus 100 dBV. So I'm guessing I'm not going to hear anything when I connect this up to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers. Here's the Azur 650A's multitone response, with it putting out about 5 watts into 8 ohm loads. The volume control is still set for about 25 dB of gain, and I've got the direct switched on so it's bypassing the tone controls. This equates to a distortion-free range of about 15 bits. Right now we're looking at the IMD response of the 650A with 19 and 20 kilohertz tones applied, such that we're getting about 5 watts out into 8 ohm loads. Volume control is still set for about 25 dB of gain. The direct switch is engaged, so we're bypassing the tone controls. I'm using the auxiliary input. And if you look at the 21 and 18 kilohertz spurs here, or sidebands, whatever you want to call them, this yields almost a 16-bit distortion-free range. Right now we're looking at the phase shift between a signal going into the auxiliary input of the Azur 650A and then what's coming out as measured on the left channel in this case, which is connected to 8 ohm loads. And you can see at least at 1 kilohertz there is no difference in phase between the input and output signal. At 100 hertz, we've got about 12, 13 degrees of phase shift between the input and output signal, and there is no specification for any of this. It's just here for your enjoyment. At 10 kilohertz, maybe 1, 2 degrees of phase shift between the input and output signal. Here is the rise time, and that would be the trace in yellow. Once again, no specification, but it's pretty fast, 538 nanoseconds. And lastly, we have the difference in phase between the left and right channels, with each of them fed by the same 1 kilohertz tone, and there is no phase difference between them. As the bench testing data showed, this 16-year-old Azur 650A integrated amplifier nailed most of its requirements. It was off a little bit here and there, but rarely is anything perfect on the bench per its original specs, at least the things that I've come across. Now, as far as using it, I did not use the remote. That there just was no reason to use it during tests, and when I do my listening tests, which I'll talk about in just a minute, I was sitting right in front of the unit and I didn't use the remote. So I don't really know how the remote works. It does have a muting feature, which is nice, and it would let you do a few things that you can't do up front. You know, one of the little nits that I miss is having a loudness control on the unit, so, you know, that's just kind of a personal preference. At least they give you a bass and treble control, and you can bypass it if you want to press in the direct button. So, you know, they tried to make this very user-friendly. It didn't have the phono stage option, as I mentioned earlier, but other than that, it's a pretty well-equipped integrated amplifier. Oh, it does not have switched AC outlets or even an unswitched AC outlet, so I guess that's kind of a little slightly negative thing that you would see in an integrated amplifier. But those nits aside, I hooked it up to the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers and my DAP player, but first I listened to it with the inputs terminated. I think I used the CD inputs, and I just have the volume control set for 25 dB of gain, and it was totally quiet. Absolutely not a peep out of it, either channel. So that's a plus. Doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, but just something that I do, and you know, it's totally quiet. As far as the sound, as I like to get a little bit more bass, I turned the direct switch off so I could use the bass and treble controls. I didn't touch the treble control, but I did boost the bass up a little bit to get a little bit more of that lower end that I like to get out of the Wilson Watt 3 Puppy 2 loudspeakers. As far as the overall sound, I thought it sounds really good. That's, you know, it does what it's supposed to. It doesn't really color the sound any weird way. It doesn't get hot. I did notice it got a little warm at the top, but not like where you couldn't put your hand on it at all. You could just tell that it was on and was humming away a little bit, so to speak. But it just did everything you would want an integrated amplifier to do. With the volume control at about 2/3, which is a bit more than 25 dB of gain, it was hitting 93 dB SPLs occasionally, but that was plenty loud for the room I was in, and you know, it just sounds really good. It had nice separation, and you know, just did everything that it should do. So that's kind of my take on it. You know, I would recommend it if you come across one and can make sure that it's working, of course, and get it for a decent price. I didn't check to see what they're selling for, but I'm sure they can be found. So that's kind of my take on the Azur 650A integrated amplifier from Cambridge Audio. Once again, if you have not subscribed to the channel, I hope you will consider doing that. If you liked the video, you know, thumbs up, and I'm always interested to see your comments, and I do try to respond to them. So thank you, and until next time, have a great day or night.